Donald Trump appears to be making preparations to pardon certain individuals in the military who were either convicted already of war crimes or are facing charges pertaining to war crimes. The official said that the Trump administration had made expedited requests this week for paperwork needed to pardon the troops on or around Memorial Day. One request is for Special Operations Chief Edward Gallagher, who is a Navy SEAL and is scheduled to stand trial in the coming weeks on charges of shooting unarmed civilians and killing an enemy captive with a knife while deployed in Iraq. I just want to note that he was actually turned in by his fellow Navy SEALs. And it is a pretty horrendous story. Navy SEALs who served with him told authorities he indiscriminately shot at civilians, gunning down a young woman in a flowered hijab and an unarmed old man. They also said he stabbed a teenage captive, then bragged about it in text messages. So that is the person who Trump seems pretty willing to pardon. He has not stood trial yet, but I want to note that some of the people he's considering pardoning have stood trial in military court. So they have been deemed guilty by their peers in the military. And if Trump pardons them, I think that sends a pretty devastating message and sets a pretty bad precedent when it comes to war crimes abroad.
Absolutely, and being in the military is not an excuse to be a monster. These are not people where we're talking about like a tragic casualty, which is another conversation to be had. This is just a young schoolgirl who was gunned down for sadistic fun. That's it. This is horrifying.
It is horrifying, and it's interesting to see the type of reaction you're getting from members of his family, because they're arguing, well, yeah, I mean, Navy SEALs turned him in, but they're just hating on him. They're just jealous or they're disgruntled, whatever reasoning that they're trying to come up with. But that's his family. That's what you can expect from them. This type of rhetoric is being regurgitated on Fox News. And that is, of course, the only type of programming that Trump is interested in watching. And I think that it's having some impact on his decision making here. And I want to give you a sense of what Trump is possibly watching on Fox News. Here's Pete Hegseth talking about Gallagher. He's speaking to his brother about this and just completely lying about the entire story. Take a look.
Extraordinary Navy SEAL resume, including 19 years of service, 8 combat tours, twice awarded the Bronze Star with V for valor. But now he's behind bars, facing multiple charges, including the murder of an ISIS dirtbag. Chief Gallagher denies all the charges, and now there's new evidence that could cast doubt on the prosecutor's case against him.
Quite literally, the accusation is that a wounded ISIS fighter that he and his platoon were working on, that was already shot in the leg, a severed artery. They had been in a building that Iraqi special forces had shelled. They brought him into the SEAL compound, they're treating him, and then he expires. And the accusation against my brother is that this already dying fighter, my brother killed, which did not happen, but is insane just at the outset.
So let's have the brother on. Was his brother there? And more importantly, why don't we wait until he stands trial, right? Let's wait until he stands trial. Let's look at the evidence. I mean, there are various cases and the different things that these men have been accused of doing vary. But when it comes to this particular individual, he absolutely should stand trial. I mean, he's not standing trial in some like progressive court somewhere. This is a military trial involving possible war crimes that were turned in by Navy SEALs. And Trump wants to preemptively pardon him, which is insane.
And it's just, I don't want to offend by saying this, but it also, I feel like needs to be pointed out that military crimes are handled differently than regular crimes for a reason. It takes a lot to get to this point.
Definitely.
So that should scare you. Like, I think like that's part of it. And I just want to touch back on what the Fox News anchor was just saying there. In the same sentence, like in the exact same breath, he's celebrating this was a murder of an ISIS dirtbag, but he didn't do it. So which one was it?
That's a great point, because they'll go ahead and characterize and antagonize the people who were killed in these cases, and then at the same time pretend as though no crime was committed. There were no, killings of civilians. There were no war crimes carried out. I want to also go to the next video because in this, in this conversation, they also touched on the Navy SEALs who turned the brother in. And again, just listen to the way they characterize the situation and these Navy SEALs.
He reprimanded some fellow Navy SEALs who are now witnessing against him. Why all these allegations against your brother from other SEALs about him stabbing this wounded ISIS fighter?
So my brother was the leader of that platoon, and he pushed his men hard, as any chief would do. You know that being in combat. The leaders are what really dictate everything. There were a few malcontents, the guys that didn't like being reprimanded for not wanting to engage in combat. And you know as well.
He's a hard charger.
He's an extremely hard charger. My brother, as intense and as fierce an operator as you can get, which you should be if you're fighting an enemy. And so it was unfortunate that a few of the underlings, disgruntled because they were criticized for not being combat ready, fabricated stories.
So again, they're trying to make it seem as though these Navy SEALs are just disgruntled. They've been reprimanded by his brother, which is why they turned him in. You know what? It could be accurate. You could be telling the truth, which is why he should stand trial.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just also like probably one of the most famous instances of just hearing the phrase Navy SEALs is the group of men who carefully and meticulously, was very planned out and like rid the world of Osama bin Laden. And they're not disgruntled because those are heroes. They're not disgruntled because they don't want people talking about something like that in the same breath as talking about someone who kills a little girl because it's fun for them.
Exactly. And I also just want to note that Duncan Hunter was interviewed about this whole situation. And his argument is, well, if you don't want us to kill people abroad, then why are you sending us there, right? But here's the thing,
cheap, yeah.
You're not supposed to indiscriminately shoot and kill anyone, right? You're not supposed to carry out murder and claim the lives of civilians abroad. First of all, it's super counterproductive. If anything, you want to go there and carry out whatever mission it is, even though I disagree with most of these missions in the first place, without killing innocent people, which then backfires on us. It backfires on Americans, it backfires on our military, and it helps some of these terrorist groups abroad recruit people who otherwise would not be recruitable. You kill their family members, you kill innocent civilians abroad. We do it through drone strikes. We now do it through members of our military carrying out war crimes that Trump is willing to pardon them for. It is so incredibly destructive and counterproductive. So in response to all of this, it looks like the state of New York, lawmakers in New York, are looking to pass legislation aimed at weakening Trump's pardoning power. So New York State Assembly passed a measure which creates a narrow exception in the state's double jeopardy law. They passed it 90 to 52. New York law currently prohibits the state from prosecuting a person who has already been tried for the same crime by the federal government. Now, Trump has pardoned all sorts of people. I don't know if this is specifically going to apply to cases where a military court has convicted someone of war crimes. But nonetheless, it shows that we have this unprecedented situation where the president is pardoning people who have no business being pardoned. And now some lawmakers are thinking, we need to take matters into our own hands and make sure that justice is carried out accurately.
And which is scary for a lot of people who may be facing federal and state crimes, because the feds don't care. There are a lot of people spending life in prison without the possibility of parole in federal prison because of crimes that they already spent time in state prison for in the South. It happens.
Yes.
And so just how scary it is, the idea that New York, in order to try and fix Trump's mess, would put a lot of other people in harm's way. And I want to touch on something that you said a little bit earlier about Duncan Hunter, just saying that you're not supposed to go to these other countries and just kill for fun. Something is wrong with you if you want to.
Right, definitely.
That, you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Like, this is not normal.
And it's also not normal to go through multiple deployments without any type of mental health care. And we already know that there is this epidemic of our soldiers dealing with PTSD, with mental health issues because of these multiple deployments. I mean, it's a very dangerous cocktail. And we're really starting to see, we've been seeing the ramifications of that. And now we have a president who's willing to pardon people who, again, may have indiscriminately killed people abroad.
The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.